keeping yourself worried every time to look at whether you're fundamentally you're doing right things makes the business successful. My mom asked me that, what is the business you are going to do? So in Kannada we call it as Baddi Vyavahara. Baddi Vyavahara means ब्याज का business. तो ब्याज का business करने के लिए तुझे engineering करना था, ये सब नौटंकी करना, मतलब the worst part of being a CEO is you are unemployable. People are also not able to believe कि ऐसा कौन सा product आ गया जो हमें, मतलब we play around with this for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and then money is there in your bank account. There was 1,600 app before the COVID, right? That came down to 80. One has to start enjoying those problems, what we face, and try to look for solutions, than to say that I have solved everything and then now it is only a growth story. I don't think that kind of a happy ending stories happen in businesses.
KreditBee story is India's story. हम सब की story है. It is the story from Indian startup ecosystem. It's a profitable fintech. They have started doing lending in the last few years only. They have gone through all ups and downs, but stood strongly and created phenomenal impact for India, and there are so many first-time borrowers. To me, there is a huge respect for KreditBee as a startup from India, from Indian startup ecosystem, and for entrepreneur Madhu because he has no IIT, IIM degree. He is like middle-class person like us, but apne zid, apne passion se he's gone on to create such an outstanding, such a resilient, and such a phenomenal brand. Madhu, excited to be talking to you.
Thank you, Shradha, for this.
But before we get into understanding KreditBee and the phenomenal business that you've built, let's understand your backstory, and let's, if you can share with us anything and everything, and also about your childhood.
No, I think the backstory is not all that interesting because everyone would be kind of more or less able to kind of realize the similar kind of a story what their childhood have been, a typical Indian story. I was growing up with 4 siblings. I was born in Bangalore, did most of my schooling in Bangalore. My dad was a doctor, but yeah, we were 4 kids, right? So typical, you could say that between a middle class, upper middle class kind of a family. But one thing that stood out during my schooling was I started taking a lot of interest towards the scout movement. At that age, I think that exposure was a very meaningful thing for me. It also made us to kind of go and visit a lot of programs. It could be even blood donation programs, or some of this, there was this pulse polio programs which we could go and attend. Many trainings to be taken. Those are the certain trainings while it was a lot of fun doing all that, but along with that, it kind of introduced me to some of the governmental systems, the archaic systems, and how it works. Standing in queues to meet people for hours together was the first introduction about how the system itself is built and how you have to navigate those through those systems. I think that came as very natural when I had to grow up and then start the businesses. So of course, I was doing good in school. I wasn't the studious like spending like 4 or 5 hours every day on the books and everything, but somehow I was doing good in the school, and then I could get good grades and then get to a decent college. I went to NIT Surathkal, did my engineering from there, graduated in 2004. But I think this self-sustenance totally came from this entire scout experience that I had in my life. Somewhere we were lucky being born in this 80s and 90s is what I totally believe, right? So because it wasn't that our ancestors or our the father's generation were not like as smart or as hardworking, or it's not like they didn't understand the Indian systems on how the things work. It's just that when they were in their 30s and 40s, India was largely into this, to lack of better word, I could put it as the license Raj.
Yes.
Right. So that was the ecosystem. I mean, there wasn't much of support within the Indian ecosystem where the entrepreneurs could come out.
Yes.
They could go for. I mean, there was no VC funding or any investor funding that was there. It was a very rare concept. It was a very closed economy at that point of time, right? So. But when we came in, I mean, I'm born in 82, right? So 81, 82. So that generation or the 90s generation, when we came out to be in our 20s or 30s, I think India had opened up. So there was a lot of investment that was coming in. The platform was very well set for the entrepreneurs to, even if you had a wildest idea of trying to try out something, this was the best period. I think I was also kind of lucky to be born in this particular era, which made the difference of trying out so many things. And not just to say that, we were the brightest of all our ancestral times of our forefathers and everything
Yes.
that we could do this, but yeah, the India also played a major role for us to kind of come and become or try out this entrepreneurship.
And I agree, I'm also in the same era. And I'm so grateful because I was not 10-year era early.
Yeah.
And I'm also happy that I'm not 10-year ahead, because somewhere it gives us view of both, a little bit of both, and adjustments to all.
So now what has happened is the competition has become too intense, right? So now, even when I was starting in 2015-16, I think still the entrepreneurship was not a very sorted profession. So you have to convince your family, you need to kind of say that you're not going to be a failure in life and everything. You need to do a lot of justification on why you're taking that path. These days it has become a LinkedIn statement. Right, so I get out of college, I get out of a flashy college. It could be IITs or NITs or IIMs or whatsoever. I need one tag that I have founded something, co-founder of XYZ or CFO of XYZ, and then so and a lot of support has come to that particular thing.
Yes.
Right, so a lot of parents are supporting that their kids has to go and try out and take this entrepreneurial plunge much early in their lives.
Yes.
During my time, it was very different. If I look back at my the first job, right? So it was more like my father was designing that, what all would be my expenses, right? So what I would be kind of saving and how much I do. I got a paltry salary of about like 25,000 rupees per month is when I started. But that 25,000 rupees, my dad had put up a table on what you would be doing with all this money, right? So, and in that phase, it would have been much more harder for me to convince my dad saying that I'm going to leave this job.
Yes.
And then try out for this three to 4 years of entrepreneurial stint. I think that wasn't an acceptable thing. These days, while it is good that is happening, it has become very, very intense competitiveness that has come in. I mean, any VC would be getting about 100 cold call emails or a phone calls on a daily basis. So in that ways, it has become more like reference based, and then there should be like a lot different from that competition that you have to come out. You want to get that first round of funding. So in a way, I feel lucky just to be there in the right time.
Now tell me about KreditBee, because everything has been done from first principles, fundamentally strong business hai. And one of the things that I've been interviewing in the last 3-4 years, the general thing is that when it comes to lending business in India, and especially if startups are doing lending, so it's loss making, it doesn't work, people have not seen scale, there have been a lot of challenges. So in some way you have disapproved all those notions. Take us through the starting of KreditBee. How did you start? How did you go about building this? And of course, then we'll talk about the business.
There are two things, right? So what happened when I was in like mid-30s, I was almost like 35 when I came out and started this. During that time, I was at the peak of my career. I was managing this e-commerce practice for this an MNC company where I was managing e-commerce for about like 9 countries, predominantly in Southeast Asia, Middle East. I had a nice job. I mean, at least my wife liked this because I was literally living on suitcase. I used to run around to these countries. So that was a chill life. That was really, we were settled and then happening good. What triggered me there was I was managing the P&L of those businesses, and I was looking for Bajaj Finance of the world to come online so that the checkout financing can happen and my e-commerce business can flourish, right? So that was the entire idea there. So the more and more lenders I met during that time had a very big apprehension of lending online without meeting a borrower face to face. I started looking at the US markets. I started looking at that time the Chinese markets. The internet finance concept was like really booming greatly, right? So then India had a very large white space, so there was a similar case that apart from credit card, there was no other internet credit options or internet finance options, right? So, and credit card penetration itself was so dismal, right? So it was about like less than 2% during that time. I'm talking about 2015. So, I was super convinced with the kind of opportunity it was there. Now that was on my the career front on how I found that particular.
But I have to tell you that you are not from finance background.
Totally not, right? So
you have to call that out. Yes.
Yeah. So totally nothing to do with finance, right? So I started as a software engineer. I was doing hardcore coding all my life, and then 2010 onwards, I started going towards product management and business side for e-commerce, right? So finance was very, very remote. Then when I started looking at this opportunity, I did a lot of work by myself though, in understanding how this could be done. I made lot of trips to Hong Kong. There were some of the companies which were doing internet credit. I could go and meet them, understand how they are doing it and whatnot. So got some ideas about what we could do in India. So anyways, quickly got a team around. I thought like this is the time. Now this is the odds that what I was facing. Married, kids, then the home loan, right? So these are what I would call it as some of the major hassles one has to come out if you are at mid 30s, let's say, right? So always I just regret one fact that I could have started little earlier in my life, so that the responsibilities should have been lesser for me to kind of consider. More than my wife, I had a hard time convincing my parents. My mom asked me that, what is the business you are going to do? So in Kannada we call it as Baddi Vyavahara. Baddi Vyavahara means ब्याज का business. तो ब्याज का बिजनेस करने के लिए तुझे इंजीनियरिंग करना था, ये सब नौटंकी करना, मतलब so it's a roadside pawn broker would be doing the same thing. I mean, why are you getting into this kind of a business? For this you didn't need all this formal education, right? So I think that was the thing which I had to kind of convince them that this is a business what I want to do it. And my dad was fine with the business, although he understood what I was trying to do. But when I again mentioned that I'm going to do it on the internet, and I'm not going to meet that borrower anytime, I don't even know, and it could be anywhere from India. I think that spoofed him off. I mean, he was like, yeah. Then he asked me one thing that, how are you going to fund initially? I told I have made some savings, and then I have got these two guys who are my co-founders. We are all pooling in some money, and we will start with that. That kind of took him off. That मतलब भाई retirement के लिए सोचो तुम लोग बैठ के अभी अपना पैसा जो बचा है, why are you going and doing this kind of a business where it will never come out or come back or whatsoever, right? So I think those barriers I had to fight it out, and definitely I didn't have too much of time. So when I got out, it was very clear for me that I'll only do this for a year. Within a year, we go full on. Whatever the money we have saved, so we'll work as though there's no tomorrow. And एक साल में funding आ गया, because this is a finance business, right? Without money is the raw material. Yes. For us, cash is the raw material, right? So if there's no cash, I mean, there's no business here. So if I get funding, if the traction comes in, we are going to move on. Otherwise, in 1 year, you pack it up and go back to jobs and live peacefully, with a peaceful mind that you tried your entrepreneurial stint, whatever that craving was there, which is there with every Indian, I would say, right? Yes. So every professional would have this craving कि मैं कुछ कर सकता था, मैं ये कर सकता था, and then always we all have these reasons. I didn't do this because I want to get married, or my wife was working offshore and I had to support her, or my kids were there. With that, I think there is an opportunity to take that window.
So I want you to talk about that. Same barrier सबके पास होता है, yeah. But there are very, very few still who Correct. Take the plunge. What were few triggers that made you say that? Triggers nahi, but things that you said कि नहीं करना ही है.
Conviction of the idea was very, very strong, right? The idea conviction was pretty strong, and somewhere the craving was okay. So the second thing that happened for me was conviction of ideas. Second thing was my peer set, as in like my classmates. For example, the Nestaway folks, they are my classmates, right? So then they had started in about like 2014-15 time. Then Taxi for Sure guys were my immediate seniors. So when you see that, so then you feel that comfort that your peer set can actually kind of plunge out and then do that, and there is certain success that is coming out. Of course, there were many other people, probably they couldn't succeed, so but they had taken that plunge. Yes. That was more important, yes. Right? So in that way, that peer set gave me a lot of confidence that even I could kind of try out this. The third one largely was the craving had got to a level, so I think that the ideas we think, right? So idea India mein kya hai ki, you sit with a friends with a drink, I think you'll talk about like 100 ideas, right? So that's only 1% of the problem solution, right? So some people get too much obviated on that particular idea that it's such a great idea and everything, but my thought is that it's just 1% solution to that entire problem statement what we are making, and there's a hell lot of other things. 99% is still remains totally unsolved once we start moving towards that direction, right? So I think that craving was the most important stuff is what I feel. And so then the plan was something like this, right? The plan was like a year is what all I have got, right? So I think that is most important, because what I've seen is some of the people get into I've seen the worst part of this, right? So some people have gotten into a depression after like trying out for 2-3 years or 5 years. Now it becomes like a sunk cost. I've put in about 4 years, 5 years. Now I think like I achieved this extra milestone. probably something will happen. So I'll put another couple of years on top of that. So that cycle is something what I always got afraid of. I was fearful of that cycle, that I should not get into that mode that, I put in about 1 year, then I think like, another year I am going to kind of put on that sunk cost, then it kind of blows out, and after that you are become unemployable in the market. So the worst part of being a CEO is you are unemployable. बाद में आपको कोई job नहीं मिलेगा, and then you don't want to get and fit into a specific job what you want to take orders there. So all those things made me to kind of think about that 1 year grand plan. Right, so I think me and my co-founders Vivek and Karthikeyan, we all sat together, we discussed about it that yaar jo bhi hai, matlab they were all of the same sort. The worst part of that was they were all of the same category, married, 35. It was all the same thing, right? Ki yaar, what do you know about business? I mean, I am talking to investors, I am going and talking to a lot of advisors to get them onboarded on the company, and then so that I can raise some capital, debt or equity, whatsoever. Everyone had this major question mark. तू क्यों कर रहा है? I mean, why are you doing this? Right? So there's professionals from banks. There are people who are in NBFC businesses or microfinance businesses. You come from some nowhere, so you say e-commerce, and you're saying that you didn't do business in India but outside. You have some Southeast Asian and Latin American experience, and all in you come in here and say that you want to do some lending business and you want to turn around the table, because digital lending was very, very a fresh new concept that time, right? So that led to a lot of rejections, so met a lot of people.
You met investors also?
Everyone. I mean, as I told, like there was a year grand plan, right? So
but I thought that you got investment very quickly or something.
Yeah, we did. But let me quickly do that, right? So my plan was something like this: every day 5 meetings. ये agenda था मेरा, right? जो भी है, so if somebody has not given me a meeting, let's say, if Shradha, I wanted you to cover, I think you were there very in your early stages around. In that ways, if I wanted a meeting from you, if I would call you, if there's no response, I would come there and knock the door, right? So saying that, let's do a quick interview, and then why don't you cover us on your story? Because that's a big thing during that time, any limelight for a small, simple startup is going to make a lot of difference. At least somebody can recall that, kahin to pada tha aapka naam bol ke, right? So in that ways, I used to kind of do at least like 5 to 6 meetings every day. One has to be ready to face all these things, so and that is where this parallel I always draw between early 20s and then 30s, right? So in 30s, you're somewhere developed some form of a self-ego, self-respect. A lot of things are at stake. When you are in 20s, फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, ठीक है ना, मतलब you will know that's okay for me. But I think in 30s when you are doing that, you have to kind of fight this entire stuff out. And the worst parts were, to save the money, right? So we used to wear suits, me and Vivek. Then to save some money, we used to catch autos in Mumbai VKC area, right? So building to building, go in this suit in that humid climate for a Bangalorean. You are like, super sweaty, and then you want to get into this meeting, and then you want to again get a rejection and then come back, right? So I think that phase was there, and somewhere we were fine with all those stuffs. Now comes this the equity first investment part, right? So I was also kind of trying out not just in India but even from Singapore and Hong Kong. This was a little bit accessible for us, so we were kind of moving around. So I went and met this investor in Hong Kong. He had certain language challenges. There was a translator what we have carried. If there was this girl who was kind of translating whatever I'm saying, and she's helping us out, but he was convinced with me, so I told him the same thing, so I've been trying out, nobody is funding, that was the reality, and the idea was, he thought like he was convinced with the India story, he was convinced with what I'm trying to do and whatnot. Of course, probably had some doubts about whether he's the right guy to do this and whatnot, but he was convinced. So I asked for $1 million. Then he misunderstood the overall concept, and he thought like $1 million for your NBFC license and $1 million for your operations, and for the same dilution what you're looking at, right? So I was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, if you're thinking so, that's what it is, probably the number. So we ended up raising about like $2 million.
Oh, from him?
From him,
wow.
Yes. So this is like a 1 in a million stories, or it looks like too hard to believe how this can happen over a guy who is trying hard to find convince an Indian banker to even look on a debt proposition. Now somebody you go there and then ask for $1 million and it converts into a 2
So did
million.
you know this guy in any way before?
No,
Not at all.
No, not at all.
And how many meetings were you rejected before this, roughly?
A lot. I don't know. I used
because
to
you were
meet,
doing 5 a day.
Yeah. So I used to meet a lot of people, right? So I was trying to even look at a friend family kind of a round wherein you pull in small checks and then you make one pool and then do it. So in that way, so I was trying to convince even somebody for a 5 lakh, 10 lakh rupees checks till about like crore, 2 crore,
You should
and
have convinced people
VCs.
like us also, no, 2 lakhs.
Yeah. So everything was happening at that time, right?
Wow.
So then I went to this guy and he was from this hedge fund side, but he had this language problem of English, right? So which played out a lot, which I was afraid, thinking that भाई मतलब मैं कितना भी समझा दूँ अभी इसको समझ में भी नहीं आएगा, right? So a translator is not going to do the same work what an entrepreneur
But
does for his
what a beautiful
outcome of that,
Yes.
right? So that's how we started with,
Wow.
So and later I went and told him this, meeting back to back. One meeting went wrong and then the next meeting you should have the same energy back.
Wow.
Right, so I think
Yes.
that is what I struggled with,
Yeah.
and always I try to kind of improve upon that
Madhu,
because
your story is speaking to my heart. Like it's like yeah.
so you go there, your first meeting, if it goes good, then your day is good. Otherwise, your first meeting you get rejected, you are like kind of dejected.
And the other person you can't show
Yeah,
that.
you
Listen.
should not show that you are back with full energy, and you should show that excitement, and you have to make him believe. So I think that's the thing, something which needs to be learned. Again, so all in all, a lot of people have asked me, what is the secret sauce? There's no secret sauce as such in life, right? So it's all those, what I would call it as compounding effect.
Yeah.
There is a small changes you keep doing on a day-to-day basis, and then finally you see that there is a mammoth change in you. Yeah, so that's how the KreditBee itself was started moving, and things started kind of rolling, and we had pulled in some kind of good capital. And good thing was I didn't even spend about 5 to 10 lakhs of that capital what we had pooled to kind of bootstrap, and we could get this funding and the things started rolling.
What I'm picking up from you, and I will again, sometimes one needs to keep hearing this, is that ek rigor, ek tapasya ki tarah every day you kept on doing it, and you were at it, and that is most phenomenal.
One other thing what I want to add, which I've seen among some of the founders, because we started in a co-working place that time. I like these co-working places because it's a CEO high density place. There's always these companies, there are like 10 companies, each company would have 2 to 3 employees, and then there is one CEO, right? So then you have this CEO chai sessions, right? So chai pe charcha. And one thing what I've seen is that a lot of people think like, I will get funding after I achieve X milestone. So they make this mental framework. There is no design for this, right? So I'll achieve this milestone, then I'll get this funding, and then my story becomes much more stronger, much more convincing. I think somewhere I didn't believe in that. I told like, we are as ready as we are today to receive the funding as we could be in a month's time or 2 months' time.
Is it easier to, the perception, in that Chai Pe Charcha CEOs still say that it's much hard to convince Indian investors in the early days than to get convinced outsiders?
I'll just tell about my experience, and then I don't know how the trends on seed funding these days. Maybe I'll be able to talk a lot about the Series D's or Series C level, which I am into. But during those days, while there were some interested parties who wanted to come and invest, during those days the seed funding was happening something like 1 crore of seed funding for 10% of the company. This is how
2015.
15, right? So ये एक set standard था. I don't know who came out with this particular standard. The issue for me was, the finance business requires a lot of capital.
Yes.
इसमें तो 10 crore में तो company बेचना पड़ेगा मुझे, right? So then what are we trying to do here, right? So that money did not look all that attractive. Although they were trying to convince me, saying that the second round will be much more attractive and whatnot, but it wasn't. I wasn't against diluting and then trying to give them the risk that they are taking, to reward them with the risk that they are taking at that early stage. But that kind of a capital did not make a lot of sense for me for running a finance business.
Yes.
And that's where I started moving around. This was my reason of tapping to the Singaporean market or Hong Kong market, right? So that was easily accessible at that time. The 3 or 4 hour flight, and a lot of Indians sitting in these places. So you have some network with within your friends. that you could crack it and then go and pitch them. So that's what I started doing it.
KreditBee, again I want to call out कि lending business जो है बहुत attractive है, बहुत बड़ा market है. I'm sure it must be billions and whatever, and the growth and CAGR and all those numbers would be fantastic. But the point is that we have not seen very scalable, profitable fintech lending business still in our country. So tell us about KreditBee, and now I'm going to learn. I'm looking at this as a master class, and please tell us generously, openly, कैसे बनाया है?
So let's say that lending is not an innovative idea. Lending is there for thousands of years, right? So people used to do in a barter system, and then there was probable good banking systems, or even our kings were doing a lending business. So lending as such was not very new. So therefore, at certain size, this business has to become profitable. Otherwise, this as a business wouldn't have existed for thousands of years, whatever it has been existing.
And we had movies like Mother India and all. You remember money lenders and that's what your mother must have probably alluded to.
So in a socialistic country like India, I think we had to kind of fight that particular the thought process that the people have, that always in our older movies the lenders were the villains, right? So that was one of the thoughts. But having said that, as such as a business, right? So it made profitable, even whether there were villains in the world or there were good banks in the world whatsoever. Lending as a business at a certain size should make profit. I think this has been proven already, right? So now what the digital lending basically took a plunge is that I'll change the way the lending is done. Not the business itself is going to be different, but there's going to be the similar, because it's a very regulated system. So therefore, you have certain things what you can do, the pricing wise, or what you could offer to the customers and how it has to be offered. I think there is a Bible around the entire lending, the way it can happen. Now, what has changed in digital lending is that how do you acquire the customer and how do you underwrite without facing that customer in person, right? So I think this is the biggest crux change that the digital lending has come in. It's not a total innovation model what the other businesses might have kind of gotten within the startup ecosystems. So for me it was always clear that so at certain size I have to be profitable. I think that was one thing, and more or less it took us about from 2016, although we started the company, by the time I started KreditBee or we launched KreditBee, it was in 2018, right? We were trying to solve each of these building blocks. It was a digital model. We tried out with the student market because we wanted to try out with a close group of people who are in the campus. Student means it's not the localites, right? So it's the ones who stay in the hostel, because that gives you a very focused group where you can experiment certain things. And the best thing about students is you provide them some offers. The kind of testing, live testing that they are going to do on your product is humongous. So the way we used to say is that you do a fraud or find any issue on our app, the loan what you guys take to buy some laptop or anything of that sort will be kind of muffed, right? So that's not there. Now to achieve that particular status, students have a lot of time. They are very intellectual people, and it's the field testing what you want to do it. They used to spend day and nights to kind of crack the system, right? So that's how we kind of made the system much more stronger. Wow. Right, so some of these things really helped us, so we found these hacks.
One question I had: students का underwriting कौन करेगा? मतलब how will students pay back?
Yeah, so we never gave them cash or anything like that. We always gave them a product what they would need for their curriculum, right? It could be a PC that they would need, or a laptop they would need, right? So something of that sort. And also on certain size level, I think over 5,000 or something, their parents have to come in, and then they have to be part of that, or they have to give a consent that they are going to prepay or be a co-borrower or something of that sort, right? So we chose that particular experiment, and then we wanted to build, also we wanted to automate the entire system. The KYC was not there as a digital system, so we wanted to automate and further try our risk models with the student market. So first day, Ishan, my CMO, so I gave him this couple of lakh rupees, and I told that, yeah, student log lenge ki nahi, we don't know. So why don't you take this money, go find some college, and just say to the students that we are doing this, see how much loans you can do it, right? So, and the budget what we came was like 2 or 3 lakhs, I don't really remember. I thought like this will run it for a week and see whether students will take it or not. So this guy goes, I think he goes to Dayanand Sagar College, and a bunch of kids were playing cricket. तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने सबको बुलाया, बोला कि यार देखो, we want to give loan for any of the products which would help you in your curriculum. You want to take it. He finished it in 1 hour.
Wow.
That entire 3 lakh rupees. So then he came out with some 10-15 loan agreements. बोला कि ये देखो सर, सब लोगों ने साइन कर दिया है और सब लोगों ने ले लिया, right? So we were convinced with that idea that this is going to fly like crazy, right? So then 2018 when we launched KreditBee, after we have tested the systems, we made it very strong and whatnot. That was a dream come true, right? So it was like beyond our expectations. We are scaling up crazy. I think I told in the earlier also, like the first month was a 2.5 crore kind of a disbursement. 5th month we are doing 100 crore. Now lending is not tough in India, right? So if you open a tap, anybody will come and borrow. But now here the thing is, we are not even marketing. So more than 90% of my the traffic is organic. It's word of mouth. People are coming in. I mean, people are also not able to believe कि ऐसा कौन सा product आ गया जो हमें मतलब we play around with this for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and then money is there in your bank account, right? So
कैसे हुआ ये? कैसे हुआ ऐसा? 2 crore से 100 crore in 6 months is crazy, no?
The idea was like, that's the magic of the product market fits. I think most of the startups, the scale startups at certain point of time, it's not going to last forever, right? And it might come very early or it might be in your growth phase or somewhere, right? So that inflection happens. For many startups it happens, right? So where your idea is one of the first ones to kind of come out in the market, test it and whatnot, right? So I think that's the magic with the product market fit, right? So as I told, like when we launched it, we were not even prepared with that kind of money to lend out, right? So we had reserved only a small amount of money that, let's try it out, right? Now the way we were growing at that time, we didn't have enough money. So what I was doing was, I was only keeping the next month's salary of my employees as a reserve, and rest all money is in the market. जो collect किया उसको भी मतलब बाहर फिर से we were giving loans. One fine day, one banker told me that he's going to give loan or something like that, and then I had very much discussed on the particular date. So जो reserve किया था for the salaries, even that also I lended out in the market, and the date was kind of never met. That particular obligation was not met
from that banker.
From the bank, from the banker, right? So now I had to kind of explain this. This was a very funny moment in my life, right? So I had to we were about like 50 people around, I guess. I had to assimilate all these 50 people and say that, I'm not able to give the salary. It's not that we are bankrupt or our business is doing, bad. We are actually performing real good, but I have done this silly mistake of giving out the money in the market. And why don't you guys wait for some more time, right? So these guys believed in me, right? So at that point of time, because during early stages, if you're not able to pay your salaries and everything, the people are not going to have that particular trust that really this startup is having some good time or are already kind of dooming, and we are just part of that particular cycle of the death of a company or whatsoever, right? So but anyways, the money came in and then we were able to pay back and whatnot.
From some other bank?
No, same guy, but
why didn't he give on time?
See, I think if I remember, he could not get through his board or something, because it has to get signed, and it was not happened, or the board meeting was postponed or so, and then it happened about a week or 10 days later, right? Or just that the date was not met.
And the salary has to be given on
the particular date, right? Yes. So I think that was a moment wherein I don't know whether I could curse myself, or then making such silly mistake of, I don't blame that guy, but I blame myself for that, because I got out of that particular thought that at least I will reserve 1 month salary of my employees and then play with the rest of the money, right? So anyways, so those instances, and this was the reflection of how we were growing at that time. I think that was the biggest inflection points what happened in our journey. Yeah.
I want to ask you, is that kaise? How, again, you have to tell us, because somewhere it just looks too fantastic, too good to be true. And we don't believe in too good to be true. There are certain things which we can learn from that you did right.
No, so let's say this one, right? So even before the KreditBee itself, as in like the KreditBee, the thought was something like, it has to be completely digital. I don't want any kind of a manual intervention whatsoever that has to come in that app. Once the person comes, downloads, starts doing his application to underwriting to disbursement, and everything should happen in 15-20 minutes. This has never happened ever in India, right? Now prior to that, we had another app called as KreditBee. So that name carries even now with us and whatnot, but KreditBee was a phygital model. it was not completely digital. The KYC was happening with some person attending, taking the documents, written and everything. Now 1.5 years we struggled with scale there. There was nothing magic happening there. So we were growing. So it wasn't anything great there. So we were doing. There was only 2-3 elements of physical work what we were doing it, wherein that and the TAT what we had mentioned we had kept was 24 hours. Right. So 24 hours may whatever the application comes, we had to give a response to that, whether we reject or we accept it. This is the difference between a KreditBee app and a KreditBee app now. Okay. Now once we launch the KreditBee app, now you see this, right? So ek din mein kya ho jayega, right? So sometimes we have that thought, but the market really appreciates something which is phenomenally right.
Yes.
Right. Versus there are certain lag in some things. So sometimes we have to fight this. एक दो चीज में अगर issues है तो market will accept it. People should be fine with this half an hour delay or 1 day delay. I'm just telling you, right? So KreditBee was just a 1 day delay product. You apply for it. I had a lot of people on the field. They would come and visit you. They will do some work. By end of the day or 24 hours or next day morning, you are getting your money in your account. Versus this app comes in wherein after dinner 11 o'clock 10 minute मैंने इसके साथ थोड़ा I played around and 11th minute the money hits. The excitement what this guy got was like so huge that he started telling about 10 other guys, right? So I think that was the biggest difference what was there, and that made a difference for our company itself, right? And by 2020, just before COVID, there were 1,600 apps which were doing lending.
Same
on
as
Google,
yours.
on Google
and
Play
10
Store.
minutes and
10-20 minutes max. There was on the Google Play Store, we used to keep a track of it while we were leading the pack.
You were the first one, right?
Yeah, we were the first one.
Yeah.
And because we were the first one, we became leaders very fast, right? So, and I think in FY20, we had disbursed almost close to about 8,000 crores. 7,700 crores is what we were disbursed in that one financial year. So there was a pack, there is a huge pack behind us which were trying to do the similar business, and there are 1,600 of them.
Wow.
Right? So
and
not
this
just
is
that,
during pandemic.
This was just before the pandemic.
Yeah,
Pandemic was a different thing.
Yeah.
FY20 was like up to March 20, right? Now we were profitable also, right? So the FY19 onwards we started becoming profitable. FY19 we had a PAT of almost 48 crores. The way KreditBee started, I think we were profitable within that first year of our that product. Now, so see what impedes your profit, right? So one is your CACs. We didn't have CAC at that time. CAC was because everyone is coming word of mouth. 90% is organic traffic. Then the other thing is your delinquencies, right? So since we are getting a lot amount of traffic which we didn't even intend to serve, we were making our risk metrics stronger and stronger. I mean, we are kind of tightening a lot of our policies to kind of filter out a lot of people, and even then the people are flowing in, right? So with these two things set, I think there's nothing much to be done in lending business, and then we were at the right time for the brief period.
Brilliant.
Now everything is going good, right? So things are good. Investors are kind of behind me. Ki bhai, matlab, chalo, we'll do one more round. I'm raising my Series C round, which is a $100 million round, and 7 out of 8 investors sign on the documents. March, this was in the March of 2020, and that day, the lockdown was announced, right? The round falls off from there,
Wow.
right? So there's only completely falls off, right? Now, it was the biggest shock for the banks and the lending systems. What will happen now? So everyone is thinking like this is a lockdown. People are going to be out of jobs, and the money is not going to come back, and probably we are not going to lend. So there are many chaotic stories.
But
so
very reactive story also, no? Quickly, the agreement was done or something?
The document has to be signed, right? So see, until unless it is signed, it doesn't make any value. So as I told, like 7 out of 8 investors have signed. None of them told that they are backing off. They told that we want to wait and watch. So the way, however you want to kind of look at it and call it, right? So, but everyone wanted to kind of wait and watch. So let's say that you are a scale startup, you are profitable, you have done great. Now there is one big shock, so once in 100 years kind of a shock that has happened, and now let's see how your book performs, right? So this was the way. I think that gave me a lot of sleepless nights in the initial days. There's so many things, so we had lended out almost by September 19 till March 20. That was our average tenures were about like 4-5 months during that time. So the money that what we had lended out was 4,600 crores in the market. Now the stories you hear, so all that we are doing is some panel discussions. ठीक है, मतलब अब घर पे बैठ के क्या करना है, right? So everyone is organizing online sessions and then everyone is sitting and talking to each other. Now everyone has a different mindset here. It might take about 2 months. This might get extended to 6 months. Then comes some of the ideas of moratorium, where you get a holiday of repayments and everything. Now as a lender, we have borrowed heavy money from the market also. Now those guys are also calling, Madhu, are you feeling good? Matlab,
we are laughing about it, but somewhere I can imagine the stress and the pain and how you would be feeling at that moment. Yes,
it was like, it was always the only thought that came across is, are we going to even survive this, right? I think I always knew the answer that they want to just understand that ki bhai hum log jo paisa diya hai tujhe, are you going to return it back or not, right? So are you in that state or not? So I think this chaos in our entire mindset, and I had about like 1,500 employees at that time, right? So there is employees also have a different thoughts. We are having this daily meetings now. It's not no more weekly meetings with the teams. We are sitting at home, so we are having daily meetings, and everyone has, while we are discussing work, but everyone has one big question ki bhai matlab, are you going to announce something? And everyone has this question that, is there anything else, Madhu, or are we concluding the meeting, right? So I think within 2 months, when the repayment started coming out, we were safe, right? So somewhere all the hard work in trying of doing underwriting the best way helped us a lot. That after 2 months, it was clear for us that we are not going to die. Now the idea is how much loss we had supposed to incur now. Right? The metrics changed. The mindset changed now. So survival is intact. We are going to, I mean, even the risk guys, everyone came to know about this. They could realize it, and the only talk is like, kya loss hoga isme? Because 6 months of holiday is there for repayments, right?
I remember
so
that.
Our idea was like, after 6 months, is the borrower even going to remember who we are, right? So let's try to communicate, soft communicate with these guys, show our presence ki hum log exist kar rahe hain, we are not like shut down and everything, right? So now I gave you some metric. There was 1,600 app before the COVID, right? That came down to 80. 80 was there just after like 3 or 4 months. That was how the market got kind of quashed. Wiped out in terms of all the lending. Everyone thought that we will also do digital lending, and then everyone came into that bandwagon, right? So by September of 2020, I think I thought I should again relaunch my round, and everyone's validation was, how did you perform versus banks, personal loan books, or microfinance personal loan books. We had done fairly well, that I ended up getting about 11 term sheets in September 20, right? So that's the after that it was just numbers. There's no CEO talk, ya kaun hai, kya hai. I mean, we had scaled, we had performed well. Those numbers, I was not even presenting any deck that time, so any investor, I had to just have this conversation. All wanted to understand कि क्या हुआ कोविड का बुक का, right? So COVID book or COVID loan
because
book.
COVID book also showed the prudence, the intelligence. जो you said ना कि हमारा risk metrics हम लोग बढ़ा रहे थे और सही कर रहे थे, so that paid off.
That paid off big time, right? So then I wanted to pick and choose some of the local good brand names, in the sense that, so that we have to borrow from banks in India. Now banks in India, you get some from a VC from outside. You have to convince how big that VC is. Anyways, FY21 we had to incur losses, not because of a bad book, but probably because of not doing business. So book went down. I had 1,500 people whom I had to take care for a year. Now during that time, our average tenure was only 5 or 6 months. So 5 months of not lending, because it was moratorium and everything, book ran down to zero. So आपको interest income कहीं से आ नहीं रहा है, because everyone has paid off. And people have taken some moratorium. So no EMIs are coming back. You are not lending, there is no processing fee also. So matlab this was it is just like you pay out the salaries and all your G&A cost, and you have to manage the show, right? So that made us to kind of incur the losses during FY21, but equity round also happened during that time because of the performance of the loan book and whatnot, right? So then it was a growth story again, right? So it was a growth story. I think one thing that makes probably make us little very successful was that every now and then we were afraid that ki company band na ho jaye, So there was this demonetization, once in a 100-year event. We were very small,
Yes.
we were just kind of growing, and then demonetization happens. Again, 2 months it kept us looking at कि यार हम लोग मतलब वापस ना चले जाए फिर से, right? So whether we have to kind of relook at our story again. So I think multiple phases, at least it got tested and put us in such dark spots wherein you have to start thinking ki, are you fundamentally doing right or not? Sometimes when things are just growing up and up, you don't focus on fundamentals. You're only looking at those operational month on month, round to round, funding round to another funding round kind of stories. But once these shock events keep happening in life, you think a lot about fundamentals, and probably that is when you come out much more stronger, right? So I think that has happened. Even the funding winter, what we call it now, right? So I think many companies have come out profitable. They have cut down their scales, the growth pace and the scale at which they were growing, right? So but the end result, what they say is that we have become profitable. We are kind of monthly profitable or something like that, right? So I think once those fundamentals has to get tested, the business gets much more stronger is my idea there. Keeping yourself worried every time to look at whether you're fundamentally doing right things makes the business successful. Yeah, I think that's what may not get valued or very right at that moment, but over time people will start appreciating, and those values come out so greatly that you would be impressed with those outcomes. I think that's the thing about being paranoid and then always looking out for where you are going wrong, than always rejoicing that how good you are doing about.
Madhu, I want to talk to you about, because this Middle India and Bharat, and I am told that you serve Middle India and Bharat. समझाइए हमें इसके बारे में, because I don't know what is this. We use these terms, but this is India, which is maybe not at a higher income level. This is, this is maybe us few years back. Tell us about the consumer and how are you, because I'm told that one good thing that you do is that you keep your eyes and ears very, very close to your customers. तो वो कैसे, वो orientation कैसे है?
I think this was a problem from the beginning. So the idea is in India, many startups or many services, not just startups, right? Many services, banking systems are built for the top of the pyramid people, right? So we get overwhelmed with number of calls what we get for loans. There's like so many calls come to us saying that take a loan. So many calls about take a credit card. Go to a tier 2 city and explain this problem. He would not be able to relate.
Of course.
Nobody is trying to solve for that particular problem about somebody giving him a loan or a credit card. Now, the idea here is that there's such an intense competition in serving those top of the pyramid customer that customers are the toughest to crack today.
Yes.
So they have a lot of services, and they're so tough in the sense that they want all the services intact. They don't want to pay. They want offers on top of it. They want a 1-minute service and whatnot, right? So they are the most pampered customers in the entire world is what I see. There's so many startups trying to serve by burning hell lot of money. So the customers that in that segment are not able to realize how many billions of dollars are burnt in making them happy, right? So I think that's that particular segment. Now, for me, somewhere as I was talking about, right? So profitability was very much ingrained in our thoughts that we are doing lending, and then my idea was the day when we do 100 crores of a business in a month, if we are not profitable, then it looks very, very, again, it's a business of getting paranoid, right? So, are we going right? Then what is the number? Whether it is 1,000 crore that I have to do it to be profitable, then where it is going to end, right? So, in that ways, when I looked at this particular customer, there was intense competition. We could never compete with a bank in trying to serve at the rates of interest what they are serving, or at the kind of cost structure at which a bank can serve this particular top of the pyramid customers. I would never be able to match them, right? So now if I am trying to match them, let's say that with the convenience of internet app and the Android app or through the internet way, but the idea is I will never be able to make any margins out of this, right? So I think this was the problem for me with the top of the pyramid always. It's not a today's problem, it has been a problem even from 7-8 years. Point is, it's good to serve you. You and me would probably never default on that particular, the loans and everything. But issue is, we are not also the ones who will pay the highest, because there's enough banks who are lining up to offer a much more competitive price, right? So if I'm not going to make that margin, then probably that business does not make sense for me. So this particular business makes a lot of sense for HDFCs of the world, because their cost of capital is like, I don't know, like savings rate is about 4% or 5% in India, and they get public deposits, right? So 5% में कर लिया तो 14% में lend कर देंगे, and then they make that margin to kind of really succeed. But I want the similar NIM. The NIM is about like 10% margin should be there. So for any business to make successful, right? So then you have to go and really do the hard part of the work of cracking the next level where nobody is trying to serve them, and they are ready to pay that premium because they don't have other options, whether so to get into a formal structure, right? So we took up that hard work of trying to look for this mid India segment, right? So which is basically what I call it as non-metro cities. I would say that if you take off top 15 cities in India, I think the rest is mid India, right? So we don't serve the villages or the rural area because that comes under a legal definition of a microfinance. So we are not a microfinance company, we are a NBFC company. So we don't do at the NBFC, the microfinance level, and we want to kind of do between the rural and the top 15 cities, whatever is in between. I think that forms the biggest portion of the customers whom we wanted to serve it. The other districts are the ones where we concentrate on. There you don't find bank branches. There are no branches over there, right? So there are only the PSU banks. The only way to solve that problem was through the digital way, so that you save on that physical infrastructure cost and you use this internet. I mean, thanks to Jio and all of them who have taken the internet to the deep roots of India, right? So therefore you are able to reach that particular customer and try to solve for their credit needs, right? And get them into a formal credit structure. Now imagine that particular the household, right? Now the way the middle class actually is improving in India is by improving the status of living, right? The status quo of living improves by improving my living standards of my kitchen and the living rooms. पहले मैं एक flat screen TV खरीद लिया, right? So now I want to pay the EMIs for it. The ones, let's say there is a 40,000 rupees is a flat screen TV. They would have paid about like 5-10,000 as a down payment. 30,000 रुपये KreditBee से ले लिया. अभी 3 या 4,000 रुपये मैं हर महीना I am paying the EMIs. By the 10th month that comes in where they have to kind of completely pay it off, they always think of the other product what they want to buy. नया sofa set ले लेंगे, right? This continues. The part of my salary about like 3-4,000 is for upgrading my standard of living, right? And it goes to kitchen after that. Kitchen appliances की मैंने एक refrigerator ले लिया, washing machine ले लिया, right? So that's where the bigger need of our customers come in from why they borrow from this app at this particular ticket size. Our average ticket size for salary would be about like 40,000 rupees. And that's where the need goes in. Now emergencies. Now emergencies in middle class is very different, right? So it is not the medical emergencies. I mean, our mindsets being in metro, the emergency basically only one thing that rings is ki kuch medical emergency hai. That's one of the least emergencies what they have in their lives. Even a good occasion like the first, let's say the daughter's first birthday party, that comes as an emergency cash need for that particular father. He has to get some gold. पहली बात the neighborhood is looking at कि आपने कितना gold डाल दिया अपना बेटी के ऊपर, right? घर का लक्ष्मी पैदा हुई है तो what you have done it, and then what is the kind of the occasion that you have arranged for it. Now this it looks a very happy moment for a metro father or a mother, right? So is working, but for a middle class father and a mother it is a tension for 3 months कि यार मेरा इज्जत रखना है अभी, right? So that is where the borrowing happens as an emergency, right? So the problems are very different and the products has to be catered and somebody has to understand that problems and rightly serve for it. And that's what is middle India, right? So when you ask me about what is middle India, this is what is the middle India, right? So once you don't have a financial footprints in the bureau records, in bank statements, then you need to develop a lot more alternate data to kind of underwrite such people. That's where the toughness comes in, right? So nobody has underwritten them. You are the one who are going to first underwrite. You need to understand you have to rely on the alternate data. These are again still alternate data is still alternate in the sense that they are not the confirmed data about that particular customer. So that plunge is the risk factor what one has to kind of overcome, or the challenge factor what one has to overcome. But definitely the hard work always pays back.
So you create that alternate data or you source it from somewhere?
We don't create the data in any ways. We always source a lot of data from many alternate data systems, which is either publicly accessible or where the customer gives an exclusive consent to access that data about him, right? So these are only 2 ways where we access the data, and based on that we build a lot of estimator models. Just to make it where I can use some of the examples. Let's say there is a Whitefield area in Bangalore, and we have a same bakery over there, right? Most of the transactions are through cash. People go for cigarettes, people go for chai breaks, people go for some office breaks and whatnot. Now the way, and in the bank account you don't get much, and his ITR filings is non-existent, right? What we ask him is to provide us access to his Paytm wallet account or a Google Pay wallet account. Now that particular information is mapped with the GPS location at which from where he is applying, because in Whitefield area what we have realized within our own understanding is that 75% of the transactions happens through this UPI, right? 25% is the cash flow. So we estimate that his overall cash flow would be in this range. Now similarly you go to, even it's a good area, like you go to Chickpet area, right? It's a old part of Bangalore, but there's a lot of transactions that happen in that area. The Google Pays of the world or the UPI transaction is only about 50% there. 50% is still cash transaction, right? So it's a GPS mapping with the digital transactions that happen, which we estimate on what could be the overall cash flow that particular shop is generating, right? So this is an estimator model again, so first time you don't get it right. You build this with certain logic, then you test it out with many data. That is where you have to take that risk in making these estimators to be more accurately predicting what's the cash flows, right? And once you do that, you would be able to kind of better predict as the more and more customers kind of come and give such data to your risk engines. Yeah. So this is one example of how do you use that alternate data to kind of improvise your own systems.
You can also create eventually an alternate credit rating score, because people don't have that, right? तो इनके लिए तो credit भी, क्योंकि उनका behavior तो आप map कर रहे होंगे, someone who's taken 40,000 from you.
Let's say we are not in the business of trying to build a bureau business, but what we do is that we closely work with all the bureaus to building a system for them. We are in the business of lending, and then let me say that I'll only stick to that, but definitely we work with all these parties to kind of improvise that system so that it could be helpful for future as well. Right, so again our middle class, right, just getting back to that mid-India story, that middle class income guys requirement are also very simple, so there's only 2 or 3 other types of loans what is looking at. There's a personal loan for all these reasons what I explained, then they look for a gold loan or a two-wheeler loan and a house loan. House loan is the entire holy grail for them in the banking system, कि मेरा खुद का एक घर हो जाएगा, right? So for that they want to upgrade, they want to build their score systems. Today in our journey, at least more than 10 lakh customers who had come without any kind of a bureau score today has a good bankable bureau score.
Wow.
which has migrated, so they have kind of matured on our systems and got this particular score, right? So I think that's what we have to appreciate, right? So what they are looking for, right? So they are looking for that journey so that they can build up scores. Somebody has to kind of start identifying them, somebody has to build their scores, and they are decent enough customers, and then finally make them eligible to kind of get that final house loan so that they can build their houses, right? So I think that's something what we play that pivotal role, and somewhere that gives a lot of satisfaction on what we are doing while we are doing a business, but there's a cause what we are solving for our customers also. Yeah.
Madhu, then it also brings this question that there'll always be incremental growth, no, to serving. Of course, you're doing this for millions of people, but how will we have all these people come in, become credit worthy and come in that framework?
I think there's a much bigger problem. For example, like, so today I get about 50,000 odd loan applications, new loan applications every day, right? So now our systems are able to kind of only pass through about like 10 to 11% of them. So 5,000 to 5,500 loans at best out of this 50,000 applications who get underwritten and finally kind of gets the credit. Now there's a rest 45,000 which are still going back, and then they are not getting eligible for this, right? So the issue for us is we are not able to underwrite because of the data insufficiency, right? So but whether there is this, how big is this market? That 90% what we are not able to serve today is that market which is still underserved. So we come next to the banks, right? So the banks are the ones who are serving the, let's say, the top of the pyramids, and then we are at that mid-India level. So the ultimate savings rate are very small, so that therefore there is a further subsegment which is at about like 15 to 25,000 rupees kind of a salary level, which makes it much more budget family, right? So it is like even a single 100 rupee has to be calculated much more diligently before they can spend. right? But they also have this credit needs, so the idea becomes like, how do somebody can solve for it? How much data sufficiency is required to solve for it, right? So a lot of work to be done, so it's not like we are covering that entire Middle India. If we are talking just about Middle India, I think we are again covering a small portion of the Middle India which has data sufficiency. But the one single thing remains very much, yes, that there is a huge underserved, underbanked customers in India, right? So from the banking perspective, from the financial inclusion perspective, there is a huge gap which will finally come in, but it might take decades.
When we talk about startups and new age companies creating tangible real impact, then I think we have to really call out KreditBee, because what you're doing isko kehte hain real impact karna. What are some of the things that we can look forward from you?
What we are trying to do today is, as I again going back to our customer, right? So again, the needs of these customers today is the gold loan. Yes. Apart from the personal loan, then there is a loan against property and a house loan. So today we don't offer those products. So the next step what we are trying to do is offer the gold loan product for them, offer the loan against property. Now what is the difference here, right? So on a personal loan you can only take certain level of exposure, as in the ticket size is at about, like, let's say 40,000, 50,000 rupees is what you can take as an exposure without any guarantees. But there are reasons why they want a little larger ticket loans. When I say larger ticket, it's about 5-7 lakhs. No personal loan lender would want to kind of take that kind of an exposure for many years. Serving that entire life cycle of the loan products around this particular need of these customers is something what we want to kind of do as our next steps, right? So, and of course, from the company's point of view, I think we are at about like a round away from our IPO. So hopefully, if all things fall together, in terms of profitability and everything, we are in a right shape. It's more about, we are looking at a lot of product diversification at this stage. I think once that piece is kind of solved, that's where we would look for an IPO at that time. Yeah.
Madhu, like genuinely very deep respect and a lot of respect, because building, it's not just, it's again, I'm going back to serving a market which was not served, and as a tech new age company going and making that happen is I think it requires all of us to, talk about and celebrate startups like yours and businesses like yours. And that brings me to the question कि मुझे सुनने में आया है, मेरा favorite word नहीं है unicorns, but you are in that last mile to, you might just become a unicorn.
No, we are very close to that. I mean, let me put it that way, right? So we are very close to that particular. That's the milestone, right? So that's the milestone in the journey of any startup. I think every founder, whether they want to agree it or not, there is one thought कि यार एक unicorn company build करना है life में बोल के, right? So I think we are close to that. Probably the next round it should be there, because the last round was so close to that the next round should obviously happen at a little higher than a unicorn round for us. So I think that's a round away again.
Tell me, how have you thought about some of the fundamentals in building your business when it comes to corporate governance? Because you are operating in a very regulated space. So ये सब का thinking पहले से शुरू से inbuilt है.
See, I think today there is a funding winter, right? So I think when I talk to a lot of and let's say that I was lucky enough to at least have my round closed in the beginning of this year, right? So now the idea is, I talk to a lot of these investors. I think there are 2-3 concerns that are very much coming out. Especially one is, of course, there's a lot of macroeconomic issues. Not to shy away from that. There's an inflation that is hitting the entire world. Then of course we also were looking at tracking the progress of the war at one end of the world, and with all these things, if you look at the public markets, right? So your Nifties or the indexes, they went high. Okay, so but the private market, it did not happen. Yes. Okay, so in the private companies, the similar bull runs what we saw in the public markets did not happen, right? So that was a paradox for me. We raised funding less from the local domestic market versus what we raised from the outside market, and when somebody is sitting like thousands of miles away and then he is investing in the company, and you say that there's a fraud that erupted out of this, every day news comes out saying that यहाँ पे ये हो गया, वहाँ पे ये हो गया, right? So that does not give a good good outlook for a long-term perspective. I think that is what we all have to fight for it, change that perception. Today the rounds are taking a lot of time, right? So 3 months diligence are taking 6 months diligences. People are very wary of giving valuations to the Indian startups now. They are worried about the profitabilities, they are worried about the numbers what the founders are talking about, they are worried about the market size TAM what we talk about and everything. So everything has come under a check suddenly. I know that's the difference between the public market and the private markets, and maybe this phase may go for this year, and then I think like in the next year somewhere the things should start changing again.
You had said a very nice line that you have to worry about the right things and at any given moment you have to constantly be in that state, and then you go on to build, like there's been a lot of hustle ki ekdam daudna hai, and I wouldn't say just entrepreneurs, a lot of everyone is to be blamed in some of the
so that's what. No, so I think when even the I mean since you are from the media, right, so even the media calls out, always the entrepreneur photo comes out and then they say that this is the company which has gone.
Oh, I completely disagree to that, because I just think that
I think a lot of pressure with which he has also acted upon, right, and a single guy, what can he do in a 1,000 people company, right? So there's that entire ecosystem that has kind of come in for that.
Crucify the founder, matlab wo hai, otherwise he's a hero, otherwise he's a zero. There is no in between. Yes.
So in that way, somewhere everyone has to get to a sane thinking in terms of trying to set some realistic targets. I think today at least what I see is that growth at any cost are not the terms even the investors are using, right? So a lot of aggressive investors, a lot of aggressive companies are come to a level that survivability, sustainability, profitability, revenue, revenue metrics, ARRs are the new terms. You wouldn't believe it. In my round this time in Series D, this is a new term. We are a profitable company, right, and we have demonstrated profitability for long. The new term was quality of profit. बोला यार आपको कितना profitable entities मिला है कि आप you have come with a new term called as quality of profit that you want to go and look at it, right? And whenever the diligences happen, it's not like the investors comes without any kind of a thought process on what is happening here. So they would look 2-3 levels down those statements and then try to understand what is the quality of profit. Let's say that's the idea about it, right? Look at the not growth at all the costs, right? So it's now growth at only if it is profitable, right? So it's the typical मारवाड़ी बिजनेस बन जाएगा बाद में, राइट? सो
मैं तो पहली बार सुन रही हूँ 15 साल में, अब सुनने को आ रहा है. It feels all right, it feels good, because honestly 2 years back I couldn't relate to the startup ecosystem. Everyone was raising money, everyone was growing, everyone was
so 21 was a bull run, right? So 21 was like so you just get out to a market and then there was always money, and it's only about whether you are getting 2x valuation, 3x valuation and whatnot, right? So we saw that era, and then so suddenly what has happened in 23 is very bad to the system, so but yeah, it's okay, it's a correction.
That's why I'm telling your story. We need to spread this story, because this is the story, and entrepreneurs like you are building in the Indian startup ecosystem such phenomenal, high impact, profitable business.
Thank you, Shradha, the way you put that and the way you look at it, definitely thanks for that. If it is anyways helpful to the lending ecosystem, because I could talk a lot about that, definitely the day is done and the interview is really worth of doing all these things, because lending is one system where profitability has been shown for thousands of years. If somebody is not able to relate to that, and then it's not the profitability is not coming after certain size, then they have to kind of go back to the drawing boards and then start working on it again. Yeah.
I have one last question, that the way you're growing, I'm seeing you as a fintech player. Correct me if I you term yourself in different ways, but I see you, and eventually a full stack, like of course you're expanding, gold hoga, matlab different forms of lending honge. Do you see yourself at some point also foraying into the banking and other?
No, I think whether I want to see it or not, right? So if any companies grow, any finance companies that has to grow, right? So the idea is to become a bank. If you are supposed to sustain and grow, then I think not becoming a bank is not a solution for this, right? So and it's not that it's a obligation. I want to become a bank and I want to become a CEO of a bank, right? So that's always there. I guess that's the path of NBFCs which are growing. So you become a simple NBFC license, then you become a systemically important NBFC, then probably you either go through the route of either becoming a payment bank or become a small finance bank. Probably there are two routes away from here, right? So whether you want to become a small finance bank or you want to become a payments bank or any of that nature. The difference between banking and NBFC today is that banks has a much more regulations to kind of comply to compared to an NBFC. Now the regulator gives you the freedom as you are small and you are growing to kind of grow within that gambit of the NBFC guidelines, but after a certain size they would want you to kind of come and comply with the banking guidelines, so that is, you know, that takes care of a lot of other guardrails, so that the public money is handled properly and with diligently, right. So I think that's the natural progression. I don't know, you know, so if you ask me, I want to become a bank even in 5 years time, but if all the conditions set right, if we can become it, but otherwise it can take a 10 years timeline. It all depends on how we build the business and how regulator appreciates this business.
You know, but we have to, in some way, I'll want you to talk about somewhere. I just think that India's financial system, financial banking and fintech, maybe because it's an evolving space, we have to say that it's one of the best, no, in the world. Look at us. I don't want to comment, but दुनिया में जैसा banking suddenly कुछ भी उठ जाता है, India में टिकता है, मतलब एक trust है. Banks stand for trust.
We speak a lot about you know, the regulator, right? So with respect to RBI, I have a very strong respect to them for one reason, that if the Indian ecosystem, India is such a large complex system with so much of people, so much of systems and whatnot. If the financial system is strong, you know, so India has seen many recessions outside, right? So when there is in the US there is a recession, we have not suffered a lot. Yeah. When there are inflations have gone haywire, we can control the inflation, right? So and when the rates have increased, you know, drastically in the US markets, I mean, for them they were at a 0% interest rate, right? So we are never there. We had not increased in the similar level our interest rates within the Indian financial systems. The RBI has not increased such kind of a rates, right? So rate hikes has been in control. Prices we are able to control, right? So whenever let's say tomato prices was in the news, tomato prices have skyrocketed very recently, and then they have controlled it, right? So then there is an onion price which is probably going out, right? So with all these things, RBI is such a system in India which has been very fundamental support to the Indian growth story, yes. Right? If that was not there, you know, so we have many other loopholes in many different systems, but I find 3 or 4 systems in India which are pretty strong, you know. So one of that is RBI, and that is why the financial stability of this country is so strong, right? So and even, you know, even being such a large, probably a fintech, we are doing about thousands of crores of lending. We have a deep respect, and we are also afraid of RBI's. Whenever we are meeting, I think we are very humble in terms of understanding what is their thought process, because they command such respect. Yes. In the way they have kind of led this country, they have led this financial ecosystem. I think they command such respect. If you look at their long-term understanding about how the regulator looks like, I think it's all for the common good of the customers first, and then the businesses. You know, so that is something what we always have to understand.
This has been one of the most, you know, क्या English बोलूँ, inspiring, gratifying experience talking to you, because, you know, after doing this for 15 years, it always feels exciting to talk to entrepreneurs like you, because somewhere you have all the checklists, scalable, profitable और impact, और first time इतने सारे customers को banking में, lending में लाना, and the vision and the IPO, and we are talking during funding winter.
No, as I told, like, you know, we have found, we have gone into many instances where we worried about, you know, whether we will survive or not. Yeah. It's just that you have caught me in a good time of the company, right? So, but having said that, yes, you know, today I think a lot of things are checked, and we are progressing in the direction. But having said that, I think running a business and scaling a business is not always a you know, easy path to kind of walk.
Yes.
There will be ups and downs. I think the way that the entrepreneurs have to think is that one has to start enjoying those problems what we face and try to look for solutions, than to say that I have solved everything and then now it is only a growth story. I don't think that kind of a happy ending stories happen in businesses. So yeah, at this stage we are in a good shape. Thanks for doing this. Really enjoyed having this conversation with you, Shradha. Thank you.